to the tower expansion here, and another drop-off area to the emergency department over here. The tower expansion.
I'm sorry, I don't see the cursor.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll just have to explain it then. To the left of the drawing, the one-story building is the existing emergency department that would be renovated and expanded slightly to the west, so a little bit towards that parking lot you see. And then there's a drop-off canopy associated with the emergency department. And then the bigger building in the middle of the rendering is the three-story tower expansion, and you can also see a little canopy or drop-off area associated with that. I mentioned, and then to the right of the rendering is the existing parking garage. I mentioned that it's currently proposed to be a three-story expansion, but actually, if we were to go to the other side of this building, on the back side of it, it's a four-story expansion because there's a significant grade drop right there, sloping towards the south. So it's actually a four-story tower on the south side of the building. Not only does it renovate portions of the hospital, but also creates this new drop-off area, and it kind of improves circulation for accessing the new tower as well as the emergency department. So now I'm going to just move a couple of sheets down here and show you more specifically what we're talking about in terms of the right-of-way vacation. So to orient you, at the top of this drawing, north is up. Top of this drawing is East Girard Avenue. And then to the left of this drawing is South Logan. And kind of in the middle is South Pennsylvania Street. It's crosshatched. And the existing properties that abut South Pennsylvania Street are called out here. And they are all owned by either Columbia Health One LLC or HCA Health One LLC, which are both part of Swedish. The cross-hatched portion coming down from Pennsylvania shows the requested vacation of South Pennsylvania Street, and then the little appendage sort of to the right is the existing alley. So this vacation request, again, is abutting Swedish property only. It doesn't, this part of the existing alley and South Pennsylvania Street do not serve any other properties other than Swedish properties. The vacation request includes about 16,500 square feet of South Pennsylvania Street and about 4,400 square feet of alley. In addition to, I want to show you one other thing in this next graphic. And what this graphic shows is it shows those vacation areas, but it also shows the gray shaded portion is the new tower and the renovated portions of the existing building that would also be improved by this project. In addition to the tower expansion and the renovations, the project also includes some utility infrastructure work that would support the expansion. This includes underground detention and water quality, as well as the relocation of some public utilities around this building, some utilities that used to run through South Pennsylvania Street and no longer can because the building will be crossing that. So in order to accommodate those utility relocations, Swedish will also be dedicating a 22-foot wide water line easement and a 20-foot wide drainage easement to the city. And those documents are also in your packet, but I'm going to scroll down to them here. This exhibit shows obviously the portion of South Pennsylvania Street that will be vacated. And then the next exhibit shows the portion of the alley that will be vacated. And then this exhibit shows the drainage easement that would convey stormwater drainage around the building. And then finally, this utility easement exhibit shows a water line that will actually be relocated along East Girard Avenue and then south on Logan Street, and then come back into the Swedish property to the east, as shown on this exhibit. So those are the proposed easements that would be dedicated to the city. The right-of-way vacation requests and alley vacation were reviewed by 7 different departments, including community development, building, fire, traffic, engineering, utilities, and wastewater treatment. And none of those departments had any objections to the vacation request or proposed easements. The city has also been provided clearance letters from the dry utility providers, including CenturyLink, Comcast, and Excel, and they had no objections to the vacation requests. I'm going to go back up to this other graphic. For this building and tower expansion, Swedish has already submitted construction drawings. Those are currently under review, and what those construction drawings have confirmed is really the viability of these proposed utility relocations. So looking at the big picture, the requested right-of-way and alley vacations don't provide access to any other entities other than the Swedish Medical Center. And in essence, the city of Inglewood no longer has any public interest in the Pennsylvania Street right-of-way or the adjacent alley. But beyond that, I'm going to go up to this graphic. This is a $55 million medical tower expansion project, and it'll provide some other benefits to the city other than the obvious improvements to Swedish's medical facilities and the services they provide. Some of those other benefits to the city include a one-time payment to the city of approximately $1.2 million in building permit and use tax fees. Added on to that is approximately $150,000 annually in increased property taxes to the city. And if the DDA, or Downtown Development Authority, the Downtown Matters initiative, passes in the November election, there will be approximately $70,000 annually from Swedish to contribute to those DDA activities in the medical district. So to summarize, staff is requesting that the commission make a motion tonight recommending that City Council approve the requested vacations of South Pennsylvania Street and the adjacent alley. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. And I know that Mr. Lestikow would also like to address the commission after that. We also have other members of Swedish's design team here if there are any technical questions. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, with that, Judy, why don't we go to you first?
So I just have, and it may not even be relevant to this request for the vacation, but on on page 8 of our pack, 8 of 43 of our packet, it's a letter to, I believe, the city of Englewood. Anyways, in the second paragraph, it says the proposed Swedish Medical Center tower expansion project is anticipated to include the demolition of 2 existing residential homes, parking and drive aisles, blah, blah, blah. I was just curious about the 2 existing residential homes. Do they have anything to do with this request that we're dealing with here?
Swedish Medical Center owns those 2 homes, and they're vacant. They may have already been demolished. I'm not sure positive about that. I think
they have not. Brooke, it's Aaron Peterson. They have not come down yet, but they are imminently going to be demolished.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. Yes, so those are owned by Swedish.
Okay, any other questions? All right, Michelle, why don't we go to you?
I have a question. I have had to drive myself to the emergency room at Swedish before. And as it currently stands, you turn in on Pennsylvania. And you can just, there's a little sort of, it's not a roundabout, but there's a little, you can make a left turn into the valet and that sort of thing and drop off your car. How will that be handled? It looks like from the rendering that there's no ability, that little drive lane and the valet station are gone. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, I'm going to share the screen again, and then Pennsylvania is to the left of this drawing. There's actually an exit that to the left of this drawing is actually the exit to the drop-off area, and this smaller parking area that you can see that's angled parking. So the entrance will be to the west of Pennsylvania Street. In fact, this sign you see in the foreground, you can barely see, but there's a little arrow there. That is where you would enter, and then there would be one-way movements either into this angled parking lot you see, or around in front of the 3-story tower building, or you would continue around to the emergency department. There's a valet component to this as well, and if anybody from Swedish would like to comment on that, I'd welcome that. Anybody want to comment on that, or?
I can. I was waiting for Carl to speak up. So there is the drop-off that is in front of the ER today will essentially be moved out further. So there still will be a drop-off, but the turnaround will be much easier because you'll navigate the entire site. Kind of as Brooke had said, you'll enter right near this sign in the front and then kind of come across the building expansion further back in the picture with left-hand movements around to the ER. So there'll be a drop-off right at the front of the ER again.
So in the middle there, there's the monument sign, and then there's the driveway. And then is that a little parking area that's there, or is that, I don't understand. Maybe I should go back to the plans and look.
Yeah, there's a little handicap parking area there.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's actually expanded valet services for both the entrance into the new tower as well as into the ED.
Thank you.
Okay, Any other questions? Colin, why don't we go to you?
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate the presentation. Obviously, it's a great benefit to Inglewood to continue supporting the hospital. I did have one question about Excel. It sounded like they had to relocate some of their utilities also. Will they have a separate easement at a later date, or are they coming through either the water easement, where it seems a little tight there? Will there be another space for them at a later time?
Yeah, so we're,
Go ahead.
Kevin, you can go ahead.
No, that's okay. I think you can answer that better, Aaron.
Oh, okay. So we're working with Excel. There's a gas main that serves the existing kitchen in the CCU building, which is the building that's in the truck dock, is the best way to describe it, west of the main entry off of Hampton. So we're working with them right now to relocate that gas main to go around similar alignment as the water line. Yes. So.
And I guess looking at this, was a little hard to tell. Will that enter just south of the existing parking garage and that open space in between?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
There's a drive that's there that, you know, is to and from Logan to the truck dock. So it would fit in there is currently the plan.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Just looking for hands up. Okay, Diane.
There, thank you for the presentation. I am just curious, I was looking through the documents and I know you mentioned the construction plans. I was curious if there was at least one. It's a little hard to tell from, and I think some of the questions suggest this as well. From the documents that were provided, it's a little hard to tell some of the bits and pieces without an actual plan diagram, a plan drawing of it. Would that be something that we could see tonight or otherwise?
I can call that up. It's going to take me a moment, but I can call that up, I believe. This may take just a moment. I apologize.
Brooke, I have it on the screen. I have like a signage parking plan. Do you want me to share? I'm assuming, Diane, your question is more related to like circulation and the question about that. Probably.
Yeah.
That would be great, Aaron. I'm having a little hard time finding that.
Yeah, let me. So I think you should be seeing it here in a minute. So can you see this? I don't know if I can.
We can see that now. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, so this the north or the top of the sheet, and this is, sorry, I'm zoomed in a little bit here, but so the top of the sheet, this is Girard. This is Pennsylvania north of Girard. And then what you saw in the gray area on the exhibit that Brooke showed, that's the same gray area on that right-of-way exhibit. And then this is the circulation. So I think from Michelle's comments, this is the entry in. So this, and we've worked with staff on this to come up with this plan that works for improving circulation within and out of the area. So this is it's a right in only, and then an out movement. So basically current Pennsylvania is being converted to an out. So it will only be an exit out. And there's a lot of lines on here, so if there's questions, let me know.
Can I follow up on that, Chair Freemeyer?
Please, go ahead.
Just to clarify, will there not be allowed a left turn from westbound Girard into the hospital circulation?
No, there would be a left in. It's a left in, and then you can make a left, so there's a shared left lane or left turn lane. You can see that with the, in the center of Girard. So you'll make a left movement into on the furthest west entry.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you were saying that was going to be blocked off so that you could only make a right turn in.
No, so it's a left in, right in.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay, Diane?
So apologies if this is something that was in the documents and I just didn't see it, but this is probably more of a question for city staff. When there are vacation requests and essentially the city is abandoning the right of way and giving it to the adjacent property owners, is there any payment for this, or is it simply the tax money that we're getting for the, you know,
So I guess
annually?
I would answer that in two ways, and maybe more simply talk about it. Let's talk about it. A lot of you have alleys behind your house, and let's use that as an example. So, for instance, when property is platted, and this could have been platted, 80 or 100 years ago, when a property is platted for development, let's say it starts out as farmland, that property owner comes to the city and says, I would like to plat this as residential land or whatever kind of land. And if I do that and dedicate streets and alleys to you and I build them, will you maintain them? And a city will, by approving a subdivision plat, will agree to maintain those streets once they're built by a developer. And so at that point in time, the developer is dedicating or giving land to the city. So if at a point in time, the property owners adjacent to either right-of-way or alleys would like to vacate that, they petition the city to vacate it. Let's take an alley, for example. What if everybody said, we do not need our alley anymore. We all have front-loaded garages, and we all agree we would like to have this vacated, and they petition the city. The city would likely say, yes, you can do that because at this point, nobody needs to access their garages anymore. And if that vacation is approved, then half of that alley would go to the adjacent property owners on each side, and typically there would not be any exchange of money. So typically there is not an exchange, and I guess I could have answered that in a shorter way. But there are some cases where, let's say you had a busy street, Downing or something, and the property owners wanted to vacate Downing Street in front of their properties. Well, then there's a larger impact on either side of that area that they wish to vacate in terms of traffic and flow and those sort of things. And in that situation, the city might say, well, if Downing Street is vacated and it becomes, a park or something, then there's impacts to the city and traffic impacts. Perhaps another street might have to be widened or signal improvements might have to be done, and that's going to cost the city X amount. So to offset that, we'd like a payment. So that's a long answer to a fairly simple question. But in this case, there's really no public benefit any longer towards that alley or that portion of Pennsylvania Street. And as you mentioned, yes, the city, this project really can't happen without these vacations. And Swedish is proposing these improvements that aid the city in many ways, not only financially. Does that answer your question?
No, that was great. Thank you. That was very informative.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Kate Townley.
My camera's backwards. I can't figure out how to put my hand up. I'm just trying to figure out, I realize that we're trying to make a recommendation tonight for City Council. So they would pass an ordinance to make this change. So is this a change to the zoning map because it's putting the street within that zone district, or I'm just trying to figure out kind of what's our authority here. And
so to answer that in two ways, I'll answer the second part first. In terms of zone districts, this is all the same zone district already. So, and streets do have zoning that goes to the center line of them. So it really would not change the zone district or the zoning map to vacate this portion of Pennsylvania or the alleys. And what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
I was just trying to, we just need to put forward a recommendation.
Yes.
So city council will develop the ordinance. So
Correct.
It's not a public hearing.
This is not a public hearing.
Just trying to get all up to speed.
There is actually not a lot of language in the Englewood Municipal Code about street vacations. We are following, we're following a state statute, but we're also following a process that we did, I believe it was in 2014, when Clarkson Street was vacated. And at that time, we had basically a meeting and a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. There will be a public hearing with City Council and a first reading and a second reading, and there will be an ordinance associated with this. So yes, we are looking for a recommendation or a motion for that recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns before we move forward from the commission? Yes, Carl.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for your time this evening. My name is Carl Leistico. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Swedish Medical Center. And I just wanted to take a few minutes just to paint a picture for everybody as we talk about this vacation.
Carl,
This project.
Carl, may I interrupt you, sir?
Yes, absolutely.
With all due respect, we have multiple Carls in the room. I was hoping to call on Mr. Adams first.
Oh, I apologize.
Oh, no worries, no worries. You know what? Being a mic, I've been in meetings where there's 5 mics before. It's very hard to differentiate. So, with that, sir, with all due respect, I'd like to go to Mr. Adams. Carl
Please.
Adams, please.
I had a question on the drainage, that area. That's I believe it's an underground drainage that they're routing around the building. Is it true? That goes under the parking lot?
Correct. So yeah, so we're providing water quality and detention as part of this project, and it's underground detention.
Okay. Where does that empty into? Does that dump into the infrastructure on Old Logan there, or where does that go?
No, so and I can probably I don't know if I can, but the current so Pennsylvania's right here, I guess. Honestly, you can't see it, but basically there's storm sewer in Pennsylvania, and that storm sewer actually ties into the truck. There's storm sewer public infrastructure within the truck dock area, Swedish's truck dock, and so actually that's what it's tying to. So we're routing it, detaining, water quality and detention on site or in the parking lot, and then we're routing it around and connecting to the existing location that it discharges to.
Okay. And if I had another question on the actual parking there, I believe there's a 30-bed addition being put in there. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I was having a little hard time hearing you, Carl.
Oh, what I'm at is the parking availability there. It looks like there's a 30-bed addition going in there, plus expanded emergency department. Being people, is the parking garage going to be expanded, or is that going to be sufficient to handle the flow?
Aaron, would you like to answer that in terms of the overall parking situation?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we've actually looked at the parking from a whole, so facility wide. And so there was a study that was done 2017, maybe 2018, that kind of looked at the parking management on site and the inventory. And so there's enough parking facility wide. And so I believe, and Carl and Aaron, you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, but there is some, I guess, internal operations modifications that are going to be happening maybe at some point here with the Western garage that will help.
That is correct. We have over 300 available parking spots a day, primarily thanks to a brand new parking garage that's vastly underutilized. And what we'll end up doing is reappropriating staff and physicians that are relocated or that are currently located in the West Tower garage to other locations that are more amicable to their use.
So it will open up more spaces within that Western parking garage to allow, and so there is the accessible parking in that garage as well. So it's kind of two locations. So accessible parking there, and then standard spaces as well as accessible within the garage. So there's no intent right now to expand that garage.
Okay, appreciate that. Any other questions? Carl, any follow-up on that? Or did that satisfy your question?
Yeah, that answered my questions. I do have a curiosity. The apartments that were tore down that was next to the gas station there, will that be part of the this build, or is that what's happening with that?
That is a separate project that right now we are hoping to turn to surface parking.
Okay, any other questions regarding this project? Okay, why don't we go to Carl from Swedish?
Thanks again. So, sorry about before.
No worries.
I'll just take a few minutes because I do want to paint a picture of this project. I came to Swedish in January of 2019, and prior to that, this facility has done multiple process improvement projects as it relates to maximizing bed availability and basically creating. Aaron's done a phenomenal job in creating construction where I think most people wouldn't have think construction could happen. Through those iterations of the hospital, we've really come to max out the available campus for us to really grow, specifically as we look at higher acute services. And when we talk about higher acuity services, we're talking about really sick patients. We're talking about neurosurgery, we're talking about stroke, we're talking about heart disease, we're talking about cancer. And this tower really provides us the platform to expand those services, which are greatly needed already. And actually we've had further demand of these services, particularly with COVID. What we've learned through the COVID periods is that people have been afraid of healthcare and have been waiting to the last minute. And that may work for a cough or a cold, but if you're having a stroke, that can cause irreparable damage. And so now with the social stigma around COVID and the availability and the opportunity for people to catch it more easily, we are seeing high increase morbidities and quite honestly sometimes even mortalities because people are waiting. Those that are coming in droves, and we've expanded our service across Colorado. We have 88 some telemedicine sites across the state, and we are looking to help rural communities to provide services that would not exist in those services. And that's really provided an additional pinch on us in terms of space. And of course, we continue to look at expanding service lines and bringing in very unique docs to provide these very specialized services. The last piece I would say is ACA is a very conservative company. We're all very aware of the economic impact of COVID, and ACA is not immune to that economic impact as well. And being able to justify this project in this type of environment says a lot about the company's position and understanding of the actual bed need here, specifically at Swedish Medical Center in Colorado. There's a lot of needs across the company, and we were one of the first projects to get approved for funding based on our current need. I don't know if anybody has any questions that I may entertain.
Does anybody have any questions for Carl from Swedish? Anything at all? Colin.
It was noted that this was the first kind of phase of some future improvements that are going to kind of follow along this project. Can you maybe expand just briefly on what those additional plans might be?
Yeah, I can speak to where we stand today. Right now, the tower is designed to increase in levels, and I can let our architects expand upon that a little bit more. But what specifically that provides right now, the 30 beds is still yet to be determined whether it's med surge or ICU. But we do know that we need expanded services to be able to create a domino effect in the main hospital and start moving some additional services out into that new tower. And how that synergy looks as the tower expands, that still has yet to be determined. But we're in the very, very early stages of planning for that. Sorry, I can't be more specific.
I appreciate the honesty of this is, the first step that you have to go and understand that there are other factors that are involved with that. So I just want to make sure we shouldn't be expecting something else coming right behind this activity.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Carl this evening from the commissioners? Kate Fuller.
I was just curious, I don't know if you already have this kind of estimated out, but once you get the green light, if you get approved, what is the duration of the project for this phase?
Based on the most recent project plan, I know that this entire phase would be scheduled for completion, I believe, end of second quarter, beginning of third quarter 2023. Is that right, Aaron? I'm not in front of my computer.
Yeah, I think so. Mark,
Okay.
Right?
So, yeah, so the tower portion, we're building, in two different distinct builds. You got to build a tower and then the ED. The tower itself is 22 months, and we want to start in mid-November moving utilities. And then once the tower's in place, due to constructability, then we can build the ED. And I think that's another 7 months for a total of 29 months for the entire schedule.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Diane.
Hi, thank you, Carl, for kind of sharing the vision for the project and putting it in context of our kind of current situation. I am curious, and excuse me if I missed this, but I'm curious how, considering the expansion of the acute services, how do you intend to reduce the, how should we call it, the tentativeness of people coming in? Are you going to try and sort of suggest that it's quarantined off from everybody else, or is that, it's hard to tell because the plans aren't in the packet, but I'm assuming that the point is that you can kind of funnel people with these very serious conditions there, and it's going to be very clear that people with something like COVID would go somewhere else. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. So we do have specific COVID units to treat that disease state, specifically since it's considered a novel virus and there's not a lot of history or genomics around it right now. What this tower expansion does for us is it really is the first domino to fall in as the 30-bed unit to be able to allow us to move additional units around the hospital and maximize that space for this, for whatever we determine next as the next highest priority for expansion. It would not be. I don't want it to come across as that's going to be a COVID tower. that's not what it is. It's definitely more focused on other unique disease states like stroke, neurosurgery, traumatic brain injury, etc.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Kate? Fuller.
One quick question, if you know. I was curious because you mentioned the ICU beds earlier. And do you know how many there are at Swedish? Does anyone know?
20, 44, and 8. Well, Aaron, what we got? 50, 52?
Okay. I was just curious
Does that
because
sound right?
I had to go to Sweden a few years ago too, and it took forever to get me into the ICU, and I had to get there. And so hearing that now, I didn't realize that was kind of like a, we just have a lot of demand and we don't have what we need. So that was neat to learn.
68.
Yeah, I think 58. Thanks.
68.
Oh, 68. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, burn. Okay.
Burn.
Yeah. I think as we talk about intensive care units, I think a number of years back there was a lot of opportunity to place people in the appropriate setting, and that took a lot of work with physicians. However, now obviously with COVID and advanced pulmonary disease, we're seeing increased utilization of ICU beds. Our cardiovascular volume, i.e. specifically open hearts, has increased, and stroke, for whatever reason, is a big issue in this state and in the surrounding states. And we've seen a lot of volume there. Matter of fact, Swedish is one of the highest stroke volume facilities in the entire country. We do have people from Japan and other countries that fly in to see our stroke program because it is world renowned. And of course, trauma. Trauma is another big issue. Being the level 1 trauma facility and having some of the physicians with the pedigrees that we have here, they're very well known across the state, And when ugly traumas come in to those facilities and there's questions about whether or not those physicians could take care of those patients, they're calling our guys and they're transferring our guys from Texas, Virginia, Tennessee, California, wherever.
Excellent. Any other questions? Michelle?
I'm sorry, just a quick one. This is not going to impact the on-street parking there on Girard, is it?
Sorry, I'm on mute. So this is actually, so there will be a couple no parking zone areas to accommodate the left turn movements. So we worked with staff on the traffic study. So there was some, expansion of just in the existing condition, to be honest. So there we worked with traffic on that, staff on that, and there will be some areas of no parking zones. So.
Okay. Well, the reason I ask is one time I had to drive myself. I had a dog bite, and I didn't want to just do the valet and stuff because I was just gushing all over the place. And the only thing I thought to do was to go into the on-street parking. So it is important to people going to the emergency room.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of the parking adjacent to is permit parking. So I think that's like up Pennsylvania is permit parking. So
right. Just curious. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, it looks like a heck of a project, and I know it's been building out nicely, frankly, over the number of years and number of different additions and such. Chair would entertain a motion to recommend the approval by the City Council for this. Would there be such a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion before we call the roll? Anybody have any comments? Okay, please call the roll.
I'm sorry, Chair Freemeyer, I did not hear a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had, I believe, Michelle with a motion. We had Kate Fuller with a second.
What was
Motion to approve the proposal for the vacation of the alley right-of-way and such as presented by staff.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Townley,
Yes.
Mr. Kinton?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Haggerty,
Yes.
Ms. Austin,
Yes.
Ms. Brown,
Yes.
Ms. Fuller,
Yes.
Ms. Lepelski,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
and Chair Freemeyer.
I'll vote yes for the following reasons. I believe it does provide for an improved healthcare system and availability in the community, as outlined by Mr., and I'm going to butcher the last name, Carl from Swedish. Yes, that, and it also, I believe, adds an element to the community that we don't currently have in terms of medical care, and also in terms of capacity, which presumably that would help the community as a whole. Number one. Number two, it also helps to position Inglewood as a better place to live, more attractive place to live, and presumably a more valuable place to live. And so for those reasons, along with many others, for the answers that we received to all the questions in terms of the planning, from the civil engineering, to the traffic flows, to how it's going to look, to the stormwater, I'm voting yes. And with that, the motion does carry. Okay, seeing item number that carries. Thank you so much, Brooke, and to everybody who put this together, and all the folks from Swedish, the engineering folks. Looking forward to seeing this go forward to the City Council, and we would wish you nothing but all the best in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Sure, you're all welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. It really gets exciting now.
Wade
let's
just
go ahead and-
emerged from a parking lot.
I know. It's going to be awesome. All right, so let's go to item number 5 on the agenda, which is a discussion of the Unified Development Code Assessment Update. Wade, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Freemeyer. How is everybody tonight? We are checking in with you all tonight on the Title 16 Community Assessment and Outreach Project. And we're checking in because we had a very busy month of October. We have had over 1,000 points of contact through our town hall, through our surveys, through our focus groups, and we've made some rounds to some boards and commissions. We have some of those coming up yet this month. So I should have said we've had a busy September. October just started, but we are continuing into October with some of those other outreach efforts. And as we promised, we did have several touch points with the Planning and Zoning Commission on this project. And tonight is our first one, really, to give you an update on some of the bigger topics that we've been hearing through our outreach, and just bring you all up to speed with the things we've been doing and where we're going to go next. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Gardner from Logan Simpson, who has been right there leading the charge along with the city for us. So I'll turn it over to Jen.
Great, thanks, Wade. My video seems to be kind of going in and out. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, can everyone see that? Oh, see, video's going crazy. Okay.
We're up.
All right, everyone good? Okay. So there we go. I'm going to give a quick project overview. We're going to go through the exercise. I know you guys got to have a chance to kind of see this exercise when we did our joint work session. But we wanted to give all of the Planning and Zoning Commission members a chance to weigh in a little bit more on some of those questions that we asked early on. So the primary goal of the project, like we've stated before, is to, uh-oh, you guys all still there?
We're still here, but there we go.
Okay, my whole computer just went bloop for a minute, so I think we're back.
Yep, you're back.
Okay, good. As we've stated before, the primary goals of the project are to really assess the Unified Development Code with regards to core policy documents and the community's goals and values. And what we've really been spending the last month and a half doing is really assessing those core values of the community, as well as starting to do some document review. Like we said before, the process is 3 steps: reviewing of the Unified Development Code and core documents, listening to the community, and then pulling all that together into a comprehensive set of recommendations for what might or might not need to change with the code. And some things that we could expect out of that recommendations could be dimensional regulations, parking regulations, sustainability goals, housing options for diversity, that type of thing. I'll get into a little bit more here in a second. So what we've heard so far, like Wade said, we have had many touch points in a very short amount of time, and we kicked that all off with the telephone town hall. I think we had over 400 people on the line, probably heard from 15 or so of those people that we were able to cycle through some questions and answers. We just closed our first online questionnaire over the weekend, and we had, I believe I have a slide next that goes into some of the numbers on that one. We've had 9 separate focus group meetings with over 60 attendees, and then once again, here we go with things. There we go. So the questionnaire, we have heard from about 693 people. What we're finding is about 300 people, 313 people went through the whole questionnaire. 380 took kind of the first couple of questions and then dropped off. So the first couple of questions were, you know, your familiarity with the code and those type of things. So I think some people got in and said, well, I'm not very familiar, and then maybe dropped out is our guess. But we've heard from citizens, architects, business owners, developers, staff, the design review team, the Historic Preservation Commission, like I said earlier, City Council, and yourself. And kind of just a very broad summary of what we've heard. About 50% of the people taking our online questionnaire were familiar with the code. So it's always a good opportunity to kind of bring people up to speed on what the code is. Okay, we're having some computer blips here. I'm sorry, guys. There was split response on adequately implementing community's values and goals. There were 2 questions on that, and one question, the respondent said that the code did adequately reflect the community's values and goals. And the other question kind of led us to believe that the community did not really respect the values and goals. So we're kind of still sorting some of those responses out. And most respondents had not taken an application through the city. So they were familiar with the code, familiar with some of the processes, but hadn't actually taken an application through the city. So kind of some of the big topics that have surfaced out of this first phase of outreach. Quite a bit of a discussion on the ADU regulations, and what we've been hearing, we have another quick poll out right now that we've had about 19 respondents from. And what we're hearing from that quick poll, and it asks this question of should the ADU regulations be changed? And if so, what should change? Should it be size, height, where they're located? And what we're hearing is a lot of the respondents are saying where they're located and the size. So we need to take a closer look at the zone districts that ADUs are allowed in and assess that a little bit further. We've heard a lot about parking standards. We are currently pulling together some best practice research from other communities so we can put forth some options and then see where the temperature gauge falls with some of those options. A lot of conversation about focus on walkability and sustainability. We've heard from a number of people about the sidewalks being fairly narrow and large parking lots kind of making it harder to navigate some areas in a walking and biking kind of fashion. Quite a bit of discussion on home occupations. Some of that could be because of COVID. A lot of people are working from home now, and the home occupation standards are do not allow visitors to come to the home. So if you have a hair salon or a business where you would have visitors come into your home, it does not allow that currently. So we're taking a look at that and see where we might be able to provide some recommendations on adjustments. And then taking a really close look at dimensional standards, specifically in the R2 zones, districts where multi-unit housing has started to really emerge. So those are kind of the high level topics we've been hearing. Any questions about any of that?
Does anybody have any questions?
Okay.
Yeah. See, everybody's good?
Everyone good? Okay. Now we're going to move into the exercise, and I know this is going to look familiar to you because we did the same exercise with you during the joint work session, but we kind of felt that the city council got to weigh in a lot more than you guys, and so we wanted to give you the opportunity to really just spread your wings and share with us. So what we're really looking for is what's working well with the existing code, what's not working well with the existing code. Are there any application processes that need to be tweaked? And with you guys receiving not really receiving applications, but being able to review applications, you might have a sense of how some applications have been going through Planning and Zoning Commission smoothly and how some, might need a little bit more information. And actually the last application that we just heard was helpful, that Brooke said that the right-of-way vacations aren't clearly spelled out in the code. So that kind of sent up a little red flag for me to take a look at that. Are there any specific design standards that need to be tuned up? And are there any standards, topics, or innovations that are missing that you know of from the current code? Or any thoughts you have, with regards to sustainability or just really anything that's kind of new, trending that you think we need to take a look at and see if the code is either a barrier to or is silent on. So that's the conversation, and you guys can go in any order. You don't have to go in this order. We just really want to open the conversation and let those of you who haven't had a chance to weigh in too much tell us your thoughts.
All right, here's your chance. Who's first? Judy.
I just have I think this will be a quick one. So I had seen a news report at some point where the state it was a state, and I don't know what it was exactly, where it fit in the world of laws, but anyways, that says that homeowners associations cannot put in their rules and regs or their organizational documents that you cannot have in-home daycare. And I thought that was an interesting thing for the state to weigh in on. And I didn't know if there was something that was gonna happen that the state was going to, where that landed with individual cities. So I thought it was an interesting thing. I didn't have time to go into it any further, why they specifically made that, but it was actually a state mandate of some sort. So I thought that was interesting. I think that the home occupation thing seriously needs to be looked at. I know there's always traffic and parking issues when it comes to that kind of stuff, but my experience is more and more people are going to be moving into more suburban areas, because it's happening already, where they have more room and want to, I'm thinking of therapists or psychologists or people who, even lawyers who might have a section of their home set aside where they can meet people, or an ADU built where they could maybe have their business out of. And I think it's something that needs to seriously be considered. I'm not surprised at the ADU comment, because still needs to be an R1A in my opinion. And I do think the size is too small for in some cases, if we truly want to allow multi-generational living. So I just want to make a comment about that in-home daycare thing and the allowing more occupations in homes. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. Who's next? Colin.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity again to comment on this. It was great meeting with council, and I think this is another good opportunity for us to be able to talk and bring our points up. There's a couple of things, and most of them for me are green infrastructure. How to incentivize that? How do we bring that into the Title 16 so that there's no conflicts on some what can be done, what can't be done. I was kind of glancing through, and it seems like solar's mentioned, but not really much else other than that you're not allowed to have it be seen unless it's above 5 feet from the ground or something like that. I guess I'm not sure exactly how we could do that, but anything that we can do to really incentivize sustainability and green infrastructure, I think would be great.
Okay, certainly appreciate that. Any other comments from anybody else? Yes, Mr. Adams.
Another item on the solar aspect is solar is getting to be more popular popular and more standard of a renewable energy, and solar access rights. I believe that should be looked at some point or another on what you have solar access to on your property. When you buy your property, at that point, it should kind of lock in some kind of a rights that you have for the solar that you're getting at that point. Not sure what kind of regulations there would be on that, but I think solar power should be looked at a little bit.
Okay, certainly appreciate that. Anything else? Okay, we'll go to Diane.
Hi. So some of these are a little bit repeats from the steering committee meeting, but for the group here, I echo the comment Colin made about sustainability and green infrastructure and trying to really take the Inglewood Forward plan and, you know, breathe it into the zoning code. And so we had talked about looking at what other communities do in terms of their zoning code. I think that something else that I mentioned is how we can really promote the desire as expressed in Inglewood Forward, the desire for walkability, for bikeability. So that to me says, how can we make sure that we have good connections, but also how we can think through in the zoning code, sidewalk widths, provisions for, you know, kind of preserving or enhancing the street tree canopy, you know, making it more amenable to walk to and from places. And then I think the other thing that I thought was important to look at was the front yard setbacks. Perhaps reducing those. I mean, we are very close to Denver. We're a suburb, but close to the urban center, and that's expanding rapidly, and people are coming here and looking for a little more space, and a lot of the homes here are quite small, and, you know, having a little bit more guidance in the zoning about what is allowed and how we can achieve, you know, staying here instead of going further out, I guess is where I'm going with. I think that's all for me.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Looks like I've got Daryl.
Yes, I've had my digital. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I had my digital hand up, but I don't know if that shows up or not. But anyway, I have a few things. I guess I'm curious, is this is such a hard area, it's a large area. I'm wondering how, you know, how we kind of pull it all together. I mean, I have, you know, a few different things, everything from, you know, I mean, is this, you know, is this an opportunity to address the fact that we have a lot of people that live in more than the, you know, there's a certain number of related people that are allowed to live in a house. I mean, is this an opportunity to look at that? The sidewalks, you know, people have expressed the unhappiness with the narrow sidewalks and the Hollywood sidewalks. I mean, is that something that we want to look for going forward? Where those things have, you know, the opportunity to replace that? You know, there's a few streets that have detached sidewalks. I mean, is that something we want to move more towards? I mean, I think, you know, there's just so many different areas. I mean, how, first, I guess the first question is, how do we divide into the different subjects, and what are, you know, I mean, what are the possibilities? Are the things I mentioned even something we can look at?
I believe it's all on the table. Jen, is that correct?
That is correct. I was going to say, I always look at this as kind of a laundry list at the beginning. If you just want to say all the things that you would like to see addressed, I'll tell you that first question you had is more of a municipal code issue rather than a zoning code issue. With how many unrelated people can live in a house. But the sidewalks is definitely something we can address with the code.
Okay. What about the other thing that I hear people mention a lot is we have a lot of places that have a lot of parking space that is usually empty. Is that another possibility that we could look at making better use of that space and maybe not requiring as much parking in some cases where it's not really used?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, that would be a biggie. So, you know, another thing is, and I don't know how you would address this necessarily to the code, but Inglewood has a lot of infrastructure that I think could be used better or kept up better. You know, paths and walking paths and, you know, that type of thing. Sometimes, you know, I don't know exactly, you know, if that's a code issue, but I mean, I think that's something also that, you know, could be looked at if there's ways to tweak that to better address our existing infrastructure, whether it's, you know, a walking path or a bike path or whatever.
Okay.
So that would be a few things that come to mind.
Great.
Excellent. Okay, who's next? Just looking, Kate Townley.
Thanks. I got a laundry list.
Good.
I think some things have already been mentioned, but I guess one of the things I feel like that I heard, maybe I was listening for it, but I heard at the town hall and some other things is just the need for more of that missing middle housing. And I see, you know, talk about that there's a need for some changes to the ADU code, great, and that there may be some needed changes for the R2 dimensional standards, but how would, I feel like we need to get beyond that and look more at how we can really, you know, think about missing middle, thinking about more gentle density and whatnot, and kind of expand in that area. I think it's great that people are saying that they want to relook at the ADUs in particular. I think that's a great opportunity. A couple things that I think are more in terms of process changes would be around some of the small lots and also childcare, daycare facilities, and whether or not those really need to come to us for conditional use permits or whether those can be more of a use by right. Home occupations, I agree, we need to look at that again with being in a new era right now and how we can make that work for more people. I think one of the things along with walkability is our transparency standards or guidelines, especially along Broadway and some of our other major thoroughfares, and make sure that we have transparency for, you know, eyes on the street, walking, biking, whatnot. Definitely think we should look at park dedication and whether or not the park dedication that's in the code matches the needs that are in the park master plans, or what would we need to do to change within the code to actually ever be able to get to what's in the park master plan. So considering that either in terms of the fee in lieu of or the land that's needed in park dedication. I'm thinking with the parking, there's always the two sides with it. I think it's great that people are considering rethinking parking to make the community more walkable. I'm just wondering if there's a way to look at that in terms of return on investment, both in terms of increasing permeability with less pavement, as well as just your the sense of, you know, what your businesses are able to bring in, as well as people's desire to be in Inglewood, with it being more, feel to be more walkable and not feel like a gigantic parking lot from Santa Fe to to Clarkson. And then one other thing I just wanted to mention, I believe Littleton is also going through this process. And so I think that's a good consideration, because we're often, you know, look to Littleton or look to Denver and just see what are, I don't know, I'd like to hear what they're looking at. Are there things that we can learn from their process and vice versa? That's the end of my laundry list.
That was awesome, Kate. Thank you very much.
All right, who's next? Okay, Tell you what, I'd like to throw out a couple if I may. I didn't see
Sure.
any hand. Michelle, did I miss you?
I think what I was thinking of has already been covered. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to catch everybody. Carl, Mr. Adams.
I didn't hit a lot of the other meetings, but I did go to the park meetings, and the last two were very sparsely participation there. But I did look at the boards that people wrote notes on, and there was only a couple of those boards, but on those boards, one of this is just what was on the boards. There was 6 comments about stopping development within the city. Another one was 6 comments were on single-story housing, keeping single-story housing as a characteristic of the city. And then another one was 6 comments on solar access and lot size, coverage, and drainage on those. And that's just major topics that were written down for the parks meeting. The first 3 parks meetings were pretty well attended, but the last 2 were almost nothing there. There was a lot of other comments, large trees, raising tap fees for development. This a lot of other. There was like one on each one of those. But there's 3. They're all 6 comments on each one of them: stop development, single-story housing, and solar and lot coverage. Those are the 3 big ones that I saw. But that's, like I said, that's only the park meeting, so I don't know what happened with the other ones. So that's what I got out of those meetings, though.
Okay. Thank you. And Michelle.
One thing occurred to me that I don't think has been brought up. I think it's important that Inglewood not try to mimic Denver's code. I think Inglewood has special properties, and that we don't want to become Denver. I hear the same things that you mentioned, Carl, that a lot of people I've heard from, they're disturbed by like you said, the 2-story housing going up right next to them, and then there's only 3 feet between the houses and that sort of thing. And I think a lot of people are concerned about the density. So I guess what I'm saying is that we need to maintain the availability of street parking and not adapt our code after Denver's, because Denver's code is obviously allowing extreme density.
Any other comments? Yes, Colin.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up. I think Carl brought up a good point about like tree lawns and maybe having additional tree cover requirements. I'm not sure how clear those are. I honestly haven't looked in detail, but having some sort of requirements to make sure that there are not just landscaping but tree requirements also, I think would be beneficial if they're not already clear in there.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have Kate Fuller.
I just made a kind of a bulleted list. Some of them include things that people have already touched on, so I was just going to quickly read through my list. I do think it's great to address the middle housing. I guess we don't really have much of that. I live in a townhome that has 10 units, so I have a unit sort of like that, and I think that, a lot of people in my demographic are starting to move to Inglewood, and they don't really have many places.
Kate, I think you've frozen. Okay. I believe we lost Kate. Can anybody else hear Kate? Okay. Why don't we do this? We'll hope she joins us here in just a moment. For whatever reason, she dropped off. And when she gets back, then we'll go back to her. So anybody else have any comments? Okay. Yes, Mr. Adams.
Kate Townley brought this up, and I've heard it before, and I'm just a little confused on how this could be done as changing street like asphalt over to grass. I mean, it sounds good. I don't know how that could be done. I've heard that before, and we need smaller, narrower streets and less streets and turn them into parks or whatever. But over many, many years that might happen, but I don't know how that would. How could we do that? Is my question. Does anybody have anything on that?
Carl, I don't know that we're going to get to the answer of how we're going to do things, but I think the point is for Jen this evening to be able to write down the notion of making what you spoke of in terms of narrow streets, et cetera, a more park-like atmosphere. I think the how comes way down the road, but duly noted. What I would like to do at this point in time, Kate Fuller, welcome back to the meeting. I'd like to go to Kate, and then I'm going to go to Daryl after that, okay?
Awesome. I don't know which part I cut out on, but my first bullet was middle housing, so we'll just go to the next one. The next bullet is, I mentioned this in our steering committee, Jen, but increased connectivity to DTC. I know no matter which way you try to get there, it's a little frustrating, whether it's Hamden, Bellevue. The light rail is extra frustrating because you'd have to go north to go, east to go south. So even though we're only 15 minutes away, with traffic and lack of public transportation that really directly connects you there, it could be improved. And then improved safety for bikes, more bike lanes. I mentioned in our steering committee that some of our sidewalks are really busted, and if you can't bike on the road, you also can't bike on the sidewalk, so where can you go? And then the next one would be an improved priority of pedestrian movement. But on the other flip of that, kind of what Kate was mentioning, in our steering committee, somebody mentioned that walkability is great, but they have kids and they have strollers and they need to pull up right to the restaurant, and they were worried about losing parking. So I think that's something that we're gonna have to balance when we're solving this. I think that the RTD station at Oxford Station is kind of hard to access. It's on that hill. There's not a lot of parking, so if there was an opportunity to improve that, I think that would be great. I wanted to second the green, solar, sustainable direction. I think that's a great direction to move in. That's kind of where the whole future is moving, so why not start now? And then the last one is, this is kind of specific, and I don't know if it really relates to this, but I have an example. I don't want to make permit parking a thing across Inglewood, and I don't want to make paid parking a thing across Inglewood, but we live right near Hamden, and Discount Tire is always parking their customer cars right in front of all of our houses, taking up all of our street parking. So in those parts of the code where the residential starts to, touch the business, they're starting to bleed into residential, and I don't know if that's something we can address, but it's just going to get, more and more annoying. That's my bullet.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, excellent. Daryl, I want to go to you next.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with, a couple of points that were brought up. Obviously, I think the middle housing is probably, housing in general is one of the biggest needs in Englewood. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one that knows of many people that have tried to move into the community. It's just increasingly difficult because, all that is available is very limited in terms of housing. And I just think we should do what we can to address that in the code. I also want to mention transit, and the connections to transit could be greatly improved. you know, it's something that wasn't really considered with the code because it wasn't really, there wasn't a lot when the code was established, I'm sure. But both the bus and the rail transit, I think there's a lot of opportunities to help alter the code to make, you know, that, to accommodate that. So another thing I did think of too is the, you know, one thing that's come up recently, obviously with the schools being redone, is the interaction between the schools and the city. And there tends to be, you know, schools, you know, do the little bubble, but, you know, the city has to do the connections with it. And I think we should look at how we can address the code to help that interaction between the schools and the city land around it. Not, I think there's an opportunity there. Thanks.
Okay, appreciate that. Anybody else? Your thoughts? Michelle?
It would help if I was prepared and unmuted myself while I move my hand up. Kate, you brought up a good point about you know, people with strollers and kids and all that stuff, and they need to be able to have parking readily available to pull up to the restaurant and things like that. It's not only for them; it's for people like me, who I don't have a handicap sticker. I'm too proud to go get one, but I do have a condition that prevents me from walking very far. And so we need to have that street parking or the parking that's close in available so we can all get to restaurants and things like that.
Okay, certainly appreciate that. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay, I have just a couple I'd just like to add. I think some of this is, it might be a little redundant, but I'll be very quick. Stormwater detention, I almost wonder as we think through much of these parking lots, this vast sea of asphalt, and as we consider our parking regulations, I almost wonder if we don't do some regional detention centers. And with that, it becomes part of, you know, building a detention area is one thing, maintaining it is another. So it's, you know, there's a particular standard that is an ongoing expense. Don't know exactly how you get that done, but happy to throw that out there. And I think it does make for a better community, and done well, it could be really an amenity at some point. Walkability, certainly there's always the question between what do you do with all these miles of 2.5 foot walkways that certainly we don't enjoy anymore or don't use anymore. And so we find ourselves walking in the street. What do we do relative to parking, and how do we separate pedestrians from cars and still accommodate parking? One of the things I think we've missed, and we've got to have this, okay? As we consider what we do in its entirety, I think back to this article that was brought to my attention by Lyle Summick and Associates. They do a lot of urban planning, and he used to be at the USC. He's a great guy. Colin's already looking him up, S-U-M-E-K. And so we developed, after Cinderella City, we developed what we thought as a community people would want. And now we're going to redevelop in that corridor what we hope people want. And we're talking about what we think people want, but let's make sure we bring in the developers and we talk to developers and say, what do you see that people want? And what's the intersection between what we want and what they want? Not only today, but what they see going in tomorrow. Because what we don't want to necessarily be is we just redeveloped our unified development code and nobody wants it. And that doesn't help anybody. So I think somewhere between, I think there's going to be a lot of synergies, but I think that makes a lot of sense. So that brings me to the next point, which is that's how it gets paid for. People develop their properties, redevelop their properties, reinvest in their properties, and the tax base goes up. We hope that makes everything more attractive, and that people want to be here, spend their money here. We get sales tax revenue and all that. So let's understand how we pay for the wish list. So I know everybody's got to have a big bucket of cold water, but somehow we're going to have the cash in order to pay for it. It's not going to come from residents who don't want change, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to come from residents who only want change. It means it's somewhere there's a middle ground that makes sense, which leads me to my last point. When we went to the community, what we were allowed to see was this picture of a lot, and it showed a small ranch style home on it. And it said, did you want A, this, or did you want B, which had this gargantuan home, which covered 90% of the lot or thereabouts. There was nothing in between. And yet we've had multiple commissioners tonight say, I think we really want to have something in the middle, which wouldn't that be something in the middle? Along those lines, I think we need to understand the economics thereof. So when we look at when a police officer, for example, drives past lot A that has a 58%, and Brooke has these numbers in terms of what percentage is actually covered by the building. It was not represented in our questionnaire. We had either one extreme, very small, 1 or 2 bedroom home, ranch style home, or we had huge lot coverage. But somewhere in between is, I think, where we're going to end up. And I think that's where the market demand has already put us on many of these developments, redevelopments, scrapes, if you will, on single family coverage. So I think if we're going to do any changes on that, why don't we bring our code, kind of Solomon's wisdom here, and let's look at what the actual market demands and then understand what that would be willing to pay and where that puts us relative to creating a unique housing product in the market, not only for today, but for the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, as far as we can see. And I think once we get that done, I think we're going to have a much better product than what we had when, and not to throw cold water on people from days gone by, but when Cinderella City got torn down and redeveloped, I believe what we had was a lot of conversation among people no different than us, very well meaning to say, I want. Why don't we go out and say, what do you want? How does that work? What are you willing to pay? And what are the things you're willing to give up? And what are the things you really want to see? And I think what we'll find is that people are going to pay for sustainable communities that have alternative power systems, that have street lights that are cool and can use, or traffic lights that can use photovoltaic direct energy during the day. I think we're going to find walkable communities, and I think we're going to find adequate stormwater and better infrastructure, easier maintained in the future. So I think we look at this is a golden opportunity to say, what is the next, number of decades look like? And I don't want to see it lost on the people wanting to either stop development or tear down every old house that they've ever seen. Okay. There's something in the middle, and I think we have a great opportunity to get there. So sorry it went so long. Any other comments before we move on? Okay, seeing none, Wade, do you need any additional information from us? Is Wade still here?
I am still here.
Oh, there you are. Right?
No. Yep, I'm here. No, we don't need any additional information. I think we're going to have more check-ins. We're going to dive a little deeper into some of these topics as we go forward. We'll be wrapping up this part of the project probably in January. And, we're going to take everybody's comments that we've been hearing, and we're going to plug it in that outline form of the code. And we will present that to you, and, we will have that as a working document going into the rewrite next year. So, everybody's comments are being documented and going to be incorporated, and, we're going to put what everybody's saying into, that matrix to where we can look at, what specific portions of the code we need to pay a little more attention to in the next phase of the project. I think we're hearing good things, and yeah, we appreciate your time.
Excellent. Well, I certainly appreciate you bringing this forward. And Jen, you've got a big job. Okay. So, if you start to feel like a lot of weight on your shoulders, just get up and stretch a little bit.
Okay.
It's all good.
Awesome.
But no, really appreciate all that you do, Jen, and certainly Wade and the entire staff. I mean, it's not easy, but it makes a huge difference. So please stay enthusiastic as you do this, and we'll do our best to give you as much positive feedback and honest feedback as we possibly can. So thank you.
Great. Thank you guys for the opportunity and for the great feedback tonight.
All right, wonderful. We'll look forward to our next meeting where we have you here to tell us all the great things and how all the problems are solved. It's going to be wonderful. All right. Why don't we go on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is staff's choice.
There is nothing else I have to mention tonight.
Okay. Attorney's choice. Dugan, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be here, and I have no report this evening.
Excellent. Dodged another month. How about that? Commissioner's choice. I'll just go around as I see them on my screen. So Daryl, you're first.
Well, I have nothing. Thank you.
Okay. Colin.
I have nothing to add. I have one small thing to add. I wanted to get to one of the park meetings and had 2 of them on my calendar and missed them, so I apologize for that. But I'm glad to see Carl was there at all of them to help represent us. So appreciate those efforts.
Okay, excellent. Judy.
I got nothing, thanks.
All right, thank you. Kate Townley.
I just had one quick thing. I wanted to respond to something Carl brought up, I think at our last meeting around density and the differences between Inglewood and the city of Denver. And I just want to put out a recommendation to consider whether or not Denver includes the airport in the calculation that you're looking for or looking at for density, because it really creates a lot larger that be denominator for the city of Denver, where nobody lives, but they have a huge mass of land that's like 10 times the size of Inglewood just for where the airport's at, or I think it may be 6 times the size of Inglewood. So it can definitely skew that idea that Denver may seem a lot less dense, but that also includes a lot larger land area that's not used for any kind of residential development. So just consider that when you're looking at those density calculations, whether or not that part of Denver is included. So that's all.
Certainly appreciate that. Kate Fuller.
Nothing to add, but that's really interesting about density in the airport.
Absolutely. Carl Adams.
As far as the density thing, the airport land is considered as into the density figures are. The one thing the UC is doing is basically finding out what the meetings it's getting input from the citizens, and that's really a good idea. I think we can go by what other people say we should be doing, but I think what we need to do is go by what the residents, the people that live here, people that just moved here, people that lived here 50 years, get a combination of all the opinions of everybody that lives here, because they're going to live here. We want to know what they want to live in, and then create the codes for the area that we want to live at. I think it's important to go by what people want. And that's important to get the people's opinion. That's about it. Well, one thing I do have is as far as the newer houses in District 1 over there, I did an average of cost on the rent for the newer houses, and it was like $3,100 for rent for the new duplexes. And in the same area, the existing houses that are over there, the rent was $1,800. So the newer houses over there are $1,200 more per month to rent them. And I don't know if that figures into, depends on what your, everything's relative, but affordability, is that affordable for you, or is that affordable for your friends, family? I'm not sure. But that is happening, and it's happening now. So the new development over there is quite a bit more expensive than their neighbor. So you scrape a house and somebody's making a lot of money there, but it's probably not the original owner. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. Michelle. I'm sorry, you were muted. Are you good for the evening?
Oh, I'm sorry. I said I have nothing to add. Sorry.
Okay, no worries. Just wanted to make
Just
sure.
lip read me next time, okay?
I was working on that. But it didn't. I don't know. I'm not all that good yet.
All right.
Diane.
Nothing to add tonight. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. I would wrap up with this. Has everybody had the opportunity to send an email to Nancy and indicate whether they are or are not going to be available on November 3rd? If you could, if you know you have plans or you think you have plans, please let us know, because that way we can determine whether we have a meeting or would reasonably expect to have a quorum, or whether we're not going to. And that way staff can prepare agendas that make some sense for us. And so if you could send that individually to Nancy, that would be great. I know 4 years ago we had a meeting. I don't know what they did 4 years before that. I don't recall, but it is what it is. Yes, Carl.
Could we postpone it a day?
No.
No. Okay.
So if you just let Nancy know, and then we can determine whether we're having a meeting or not, or if you know you're going to be here, please say, yes, I'm going to be here. But in deference to this, if we do have a meeting, what we would ask is that it would be a light agenda if we do have a meeting, so that there's nothing consequential, et cetera. I mean, maybe informative where somebody could read a packet. So if we choose not to, a commissioner who has a particular obligation on November 3rd would not feel like they're torn between wherever it is they want to go and where it is that they've kind of already committed to go. And so what do you do? So if you could do that, and I think just in closing, the market forces in this country have done a great job of creating balance, opportunity, much equality of opportunity throughout its history. I think also that communities that have done well have done a great job of listening to all parties and understanding what makes sense, and then being able to understand what makes that community unique. So what can people say about people who live in, for example, Englewood, Colorado, and what is it we want them to be able to say? And so if somebody says, I'm looking for a community that offers the following attributes, we hope that the people would say, and those attributes are where I'm moving to, and that's going to be Englewood, Colorado, where I can find these things, and there may be some people who can't find those things, okay? But welcome to market forces moving not only infrastructure or demand on infrastructure, but housing, commercial environments, redevelopment with the DDA, and all sorts of other things. It's an exciting time to be here, and I want to thank everybody for joining tonight. Look forward to our next meeting, and everybody have a great rest of the week. Thanks so much. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Night.
Bye.